Hey everybody, thanks for coming to one of the last sessions of Ready. Does everyone have a great time so far at Ready? All right. My name is Dean. I'm one of 4 speakers today. If I had to shorten this title of this talk, what we're going to be talking about today is applied generative AI. I'll help decode this longer title here. SerenityGPT is a startup that's part of the InterSystems startup program. Founder, CEO is right here, Victor. IRIS Vector Search is InterSystems generative AI technology. So what this title is really saying is using a generative AI startup solution built on IRIS to build out enterprise generative AI solutions. So we're going to be talking you through some of the things we've done in partnership with SerenityGPT in InterSystems. The goal is to inspire you to work on your own, incorporate your own generative AI solutions in the enterprise, and also make you aware of some tools that you can use that we built for you and others that we use that were built to use on your behalf. Here is the agenda. We're going to start with the popular social media, how it started, how it's going, and then we're going to add where it's going in the future. We're going to do a little deep dive into SerenityGPT itself, and then we'll have a panel discussion where you can ask questions yourself. So first, we'll talk about the very first project we did with SerenityGPT, and it was in the InterSystems developer community, which my team runs. This is just to give you a look at what this is. The first thing we did with them is a chatbot inside the InterSystems developer community. It's using the knowledge bases of InterSystems developer community posts, InterSystems IRIS documentation, and also information from our open exchange, open source app gallery. I think at this stage you're all familiar with chatbots, but this one, of course, is incredibly useful, and it's really bringing the InterSystems developer experience into the 21st century. You can ask it for code samples. You can ask it what particular elements of our technology are. You can ask how to get started, and it'll, of course, answer all those things. And you can like the posts or not. You can turn the posts into a post in the developer community. You can select which of those knowledge bases you want to use, and so forth. This is a very recent addition. We took the same technology, the same mechanism, and we created this little bot. One of the things that developers do in the developer community is post questions to the community. So now, to shorten the time of response, the SerenityGPT solution actually answers the question. Of course, members can also comment, also answer, but it just shortens that time to an answer in the community. We wanted to quickly give you a look at our process. So as I mentioned, InterSystems has a startup program. We first met SerenityGPT at a startup event in London. We also have a corporate venture fund, and so when we engaged them about perhaps building on our technology, we awarded them a grant from our venture fund to make building the POC on our technology extremely easy. They helped us very rapidly build a beta version of this solution you just saw within 3 months. And then we've worked on developing the partnership, and you'll see what we've done with that partnership in the next few minutes. Some fun facts. The developer community AI was InterSystems' first public-facing AI assistant. It also happened to be the very first production use of our IRIS Vector Search technology. From the time we launched IRIS Vector Search to the time this went live was 3 short months, incredibly rapid development, and it was launched in June 2024. Just a quick note, again, these are the things you can ask and get answers on. I just wanted to let you know that part of this solution is that you can continually add knowledge or knowledge bases. So we started with just the posts, we added the documentation, we very recently added the Open Exchange app galleries, and there are future plans, of course. So it's just to let you know that part of this and part of your work that you can do is you can start and then add as you go. This is a very quick look at the architecture. I'm not going to dive into details. You'll actually hear more about the architecture in a second, but I'll just point out 3 quick things. Here on your left, it's ingesting articles. It actually syncs with new data from the community daily. And the IRIS Vector Search is in the middle there, and the IRIS database, and that is where all of our content, our enterprise content, is vectorized to use in a retrieval augmented generation pattern with a large language model. And then at the far right, I just want you to know that they have a full solution, SerenityGPT, but we decided, as others can decide, to build our own user experience in our developer community with our developer community resources and just call this service. So we've constructed what the UI looks like and how it functions. And with that, I am going to pass it off to Hannah.
Thank you. Hi. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how it's going currently with Serenity, focused on our internal application fountain, just with leveraging SerenityGPT, and then also how we're augmenting, both using IRIS. So kind of where this came out of was a company-wide question, which is just we have so much documentation at our fingertips. We're a database company. How best do we use all of our data? And a custom enterprise-wide RAG solution is, the answer that we've all been talking about lots. That introduces another question, which is, do we take the time to build this completely in-house, or do we rely on existing tooling and solutions that are already out there? So what was Fountain? How did it start out initially? Initially, we built a fully in-house working solution, which was performing vector search directly in application. This was completely on IRIS. As we kind of built our partnership with SerenityGPT, as Dean just explained, we realized that we kind of wanted to go in a change of direction. And that Serenity's configurability, their LLM chains, and their uses leveled up what we had built on IRIS in our short time of that first POC. And their solution is still completely IRIS-backed. So what this gives us is, instead of spending all of our internal resources to build the RAG piece of this, SerenityGPT is there for us. We rely on them. They handle agentic AI, they handle RAG, they handle all of those pieces, and we can focus our development time back to what we were doing before and custom solutions and kind of what our users need us for. So what is Fountain now then? So Fountain is a centralized fountain of resources, pulling documentation directly from Perforce, and then it makes all of that information available via vector search. The other big piece of what it does is it's a middleware application. So it sits between any internal applications that InterSystems has and SerenityGPT, and then it handles any of the go-between of that relationship. And this is really the core of enabling an enterprise-wide RAG solution. So I have a flow diagram here, which shows the setup of what we are using now with Serenity. But on the left-hand side, you'll see that instead of listing a couple of internal applications, this could be really any internal application that we have. If another team at InterSystems came to us and said, we have a new source, we have new docs, we want to feed these in, we want our own chatbot. It's extremely easy to fit those in on the left-hand side and add them to the existing architecture. So internal applications only speak with Fountain. They send their requests to Fountain, and they get their response and resources back from Fountain. Fountain is, as many of you would know, as an internal application on an InterSystems IRIS Vector database. And then on top of that, we augment with some more IRIS capabilities. So we have an IRIS interoperability layer, that production on top, that handles security. We're using that for pass-through security right now, as well as tracing. And Fountain handles any of our kind of custom solution build-outs that we wanted. On the other side, which is what Victor will go much more in depth on, is kind of the Serenity architecture. So that request going over to Serenity, them sending that to their own IRIS Vector database. Again, as I had mentioned, kind of here, IRIS augmenting IRIS, right? This fully IRIS solution. Sending back the requests and docs, those go to the LLM. and eventually this goes back through Fountain, back through our interoperability layer, and out to that internal app for whatever chatbot they may be used. So you can see here, this is a really easily understandable and honestly as easily reproducible RAG solution. So what are we leveraging with SerenityGPT? At its core, Serenity are experts in the LLM and AI spaces. So they're handling a list of things, and it doesn't really matter exactly what, as long as it's just they're handling those for us. We have their expertise, we have their extremely powerful tooling. They'll explain a lot more about the details of that, but that's given us a huge platform to build upon. And then we're able to use Iris to augment this even further for our own needs. So we wrap SerenityGPT's capabilities and all of their APIs with InterSystems IRIS Interoperability and our in-house expertise of our team and the internal resources we have within the company so that we can create the really perfect customizable solution that we need. So right now, some examples of what we're handling: communicating with internal perforce, custom parsing, pass-through security using that interop layer, conversation history. And again, the list itself isn't exactly what matters. It's more just the opportunities that lay there for us to create those custom solutions. What this has given us, as I kind of touched on before, is really, really accelerated deployment for our custom solutions because we get to rely on Serenity in the process. So I just have two quick examples to show you. The first is Ask Me, which I'm sure many of you have seen outside, and if you haven't, check out our docs website, another plug for Ask Me. This is currently in beta, but once it goes fully to production, we will rely on exactly that diagram I showed you with SerenityGPT powering all of the GPT capabilities on the backside. And another one is Yoki. This is an internal-only bot, but feeds in, takes in our track care documentation, and it's just another chatbot. So you can see here, just in a short amount of time that we've had this relationship, we've built out really capably custom solutions, custom chatbots for these internal resources really successfully. So a really cool relationship that we're building on. And now Ben will talk about the future.
Thank you, Hannah. My name is Ben Speed, and I'm the head of application services within InterSystems. So we're the in-house application development team, basically dutifully eating our own dog food. We're heading up the initiative in terms of Fountain and the partnership with Serenity. And I just wanted to say a few words about where we're planning to go with all of this. So the vision really is that SerenityGPT via Fountain as its wrapper really becomes our one-stop shop for all of our intelligent access into internal and external InterSystems knowledge. So knowledge sources become documents consumed by SerenityGPT, documents become available via semantic search, and then documents are resources for specific knowledge worker RAG use cases. And specifically, like as an example, we have the DCAI, we've got Ask Me in beta, we've got Yoki in beta, and then future considerations would be like a CCR advisor, being able to take the knowledge for our change control system and help implementers do their job faster. A support chatbot within the WRC, either internally or externally facing. And then an object script code bot, being able to get helpful knowledge on object script based on that. Now our approach is going to be that we're basically taking access and security as sort of fundamental first step for anything that we're doing. In order to do that, we have to break all of our knowledge sources into either public or sensitive categories. And due to our own policies, the embeddings cannot be calculated in the cloud for anything that's sensitive. We're not going to be sending to an LLM in the cloud for anything that's sensitive. Those have to live on on-prem GPUs. But public knowledge can go through an LLM cloud services. So currently today, we're deployed using LLM and embeddings generation within the cloud. We're currently building out on-prem GPU resources so that we can start taking care of some of those sensitive knowledge sources as well for internal bots or the ability to do RAG on internal systems. So public knowledge sources, we've already talked about several of these, but all of our documentation, developer community, open exchange, client connection, learning resources, we're going to be adding class reference information. I know there's a big demand for that within the bots. Open source GitHub code. And then we've got sensitive knowledge that we're going to keep internal. It's going to stay within the walls of our network. Product code, internal application code, our Jira, Confluence, SharePoint, Stack Overflow that we have internally for employees. And then there's our transactional systems like WRC, iService, and CCR, and then other internal application record. So by splitting up into the types, then we can also have an appropriate target audience for the various chatbot and which domains of knowledge those bots will have access to. All right, this is an eye chart. You're not intended to be able to read it. It's just to let you know we've got a big picture. It's a very big picture on this screen. And this is the direction that we're heading. So just to orient you, at the top, it's basically all of our various knowledge sources, as well as Perforce for source control. And the idea is that this will all be able to be consumed, have embeddings generated and stored within Serenity, which is in the middle. And blue is our sort of public facing and red is our sensitive data. And then different ways to consume this on the right, eventually exposing everything for semantic search. So if we don't need full RAG, if we just need to, like I need to understand what documents are available on XYZ, or I'm trying to find a specific record, we can go through semantic search. And then on the left are the various different RAG clients where there's a chat interface depending on the basically type of work that somebody is trying to do. And so we are working on building this out piece by piece as we go. And then beyond RAG, just internally, SerenityGPT is already using agentic work when it comes to being able to pick between types of sources and whatnot. But then we also are building out our own basically MCP server driven agentic agent that is sitting in Fountain called Plaza, and a plaza is a place where people gather to engage with ideas, and others often with a fountain at its center, so little play on words there. But we're using IRIS interoperability to drive all of this. Interop is very, very well suited for the types of decision making and agentic reaching out to various MCP servers and providing connectivity, traceability, et cetera. So we actually have a team right now actively building this out internally to get to this sort of internal knowledge guru. And then we've already a POC in place where we've shown IRIS Interop working with MCP servers sitting in front of Jira Confluence. We're going to actually start making some custom MCP servers for CCR. And then Serenity is adding an MCP capability to their product as well. So that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Victor.
Thank you, Ben. So what it is that we actually do. In Towards, we are doing RAG and agentic AI on IRIS. And our tagline is that we are doing RAG right. And we'll dive into what I mean by that in the next few slides. Just using this for illustration, if you were to pick an out-of-the-box tool, say LangChain or Microsoft Copilot, and try doing RAG using that, you'll get some results that are good for a demo, but that are not production quality. So you may get to something like 50% accuracy in question answering, and where we take you is over 95% of accuracy, and we do that by first providing measurability. A core part of what we do is being able to measure how well the system is performing, and we are doing that by starting every engagement with collecting a validation set, which is 20 plus questions and correct answers. And correct answers could take the form of a quick summary of what the answer should mention, or it could be a link to the page or to the document that provides the correct answer. And then we are using LLM as a judge. So we are automating QA for those validation sets. This is one of the examples of what the output of automated QA looks like. So you have the query text at the top. That is, what is the order of operations in object script? And then we get that question. We ask Serenity to provide the answer. That's the answer text. And we know that if, as part of the validation set, there was the correct answer. In this case, the instructions mention that the order of operations is strictly left to right. And the LLM makes the decision. It explains how it arrived at its decision. So if you want to have a human set of eyes, take a look at it and validate it, you can do that. And we've been doing it for a very long time to get our LLM as a judge working well enough. And it is working well enough now. And what that lets us do is whenever we make a configuration change, or whenever we are initially setting up the first version of Serenity for a new use case, we get an automated output that highlights problematic places. So a red exclamation mark would mean that this question, we know that the answer we should be answering correctly, but we are not answering correctly. And actually we use that in our automation and our CI/CD pipelines. So if we are getting red exclamation marks, we are not merging that code. This is a real validation set for track care. So some of the questions may make sense to you. It's just an example of where we are getting all of them right except for one. I'll talk a bit about the technical things behind all of this, and just to remind you what embeddings are, which is the main part of what we do. It's something that takes a passage of text and creates a vector representation. In this case, I'm using 2 dimensions, so we're just talking about 2 numbers, 2 coordinates. And the magic is that when you have a sentence like, I just ate an apple, it will be close in this vector space, and we could use Euclidean distance or something called cosine similarity. So I just ate an apple will be near Alice had fruit for breakfast, but will be far away from a new Apple store just opened on Regent Street. And these embedding models are very powerful, even though they're much, much smaller than large language models. But that is 90% of what we do. So RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. Retrieval refers to being able to find the relevant bits of information, to search by meaning. And that's where 95% of the value we provide lies. So what are the interesting or the difficult bits? The first one is actually choosing the embedding model. So that's the model that takes as input passages of text, like I just ate an apple, and outputs a vector representation of it. There are open source embedding models. We have our eval sets that let us compare different embedding models. And not so long ago, we started using a more recent embedding model, open source one called Snowflake Arctic V1. And we also have the ability to fine-tune embedding models, which is something that we did not find useful just yet, but it may come useful for very specialized domains. Then when you embed text, you need to split it into smaller bits that contain just a few ideas, as opposed to embedding a long manual or a long PDF document. So that is called chunking. And we take care of that. And when you chunk, you need to provide just enough context for each chunk to know what it's about. So for example, you want to include the title of the document, you want to include the section, subsection, and possibly breadcrumbs to that document. We are doing all of that. Then we are configuring search parameters, for example, how many search results to return, whether to include keyword search, whether to do re-ranking. We are doing some prompt engineering, and there is no getting away from that just yet, and that turns out to be important as well. We make sure that search and the LLM understand synonyms and jargon. We choose the LLM to use. For example, if we want to have 0 hallucinations or close to that, we would use reasoning models like O3. If we want real-time responses, we'll use GPT-4o. If we want the data to be on-prem, we'll use Llama models. And we are doing a lot of agentic AI on top of all of this. And I'll give you a few examples just in a minute. We are playing with on-prem large language models and quantized versions of them, so they can take fewer than 8 H100 GPUs, for example. And those are just a few dimensions. So just to recap, what are the core components of what we do? It's the evaluation engine that lets you know how well the system is performing when you're calibrating it. It's the RAG engine itself, so that's what, given a question, returns an answer. And it's agentic AI, so that's something that does 2 things. It can help you automate repeatable tasks, but it can also enable deeper reasoning when you are answering complicated questions. So for example, in the context of Ask Me bot, there are 3 types of questions. You could ask questions about Iris. You could ask for learning recommendations, like what courses should I take to learn about object script, or you could ask questions about the Ask Me bot itself. And the way we implement that is by giving the LLM 3 tools. One tool would search across documentation, another tool would search across the course catalog, and the last one will just look at the About Me page, and the LLM will decide which tool to call based on the question. And that works amazingly well, and that's very scalable because each tool has its own description, so it's modularized, and you just need to provide the tools to the LLM, and then it will do the rest. This is our architecture. In the middle of it, there is the vector database, which is IRIS Vector Search, and that's what we use to find the similar or the relevant information to the question. Then it all starts from ingesting the data and keeping the data in sync, and we have other modularized components like the embedding models that create the embeddings, and the large language model that provides the answer and is responsible for orchestration and for calling the right tools. And the output can be accessed via API endpoints, or it could be an embeddable UI component. On-prem embeddings well, they're very important because they do a few things that are important to many IRIS customers. You have to worry about things like how much extra storage do I need to store the embeddings. And we can easily compare different embedding models. We can talk about actually quantizing embedding models themselves to see how much memory, how much storage we need, but also how well the system is performing for the current embedding model. And to measure the time that is required to embed all of the data using different hardware. Similarly, for on-prem large language models, we can do the same exercises, but in the context of the quality of answers to the questions by running our evals, and in the context of the hardware limitations. So as we look at smaller models, we can see how much worse they perform given our evals. And our approach is to make the most of IRIS Vector Search. Crucially, the data remains in IRIS, and we can do all of the processing on-prem. We are trying to keep it as light as we can on the customer and on the IT resources, so we are doing all the work. Everything that we do is containerized and very rapidly deployable and configurable. And if you take a high-level view, IRIS has interoperability that's great for getting data in different formats. It has smart data fabric that is great for analytics over structured data. And what we are adding to it is this layer that makes it very easy to work with unstructured data and to enable GenAI use cases. Thank you.
All right, so at this point, we're going to open up to some Q&A for the members of the panel. No topic is out of bounds. Feel free to let us know. Please raise your hand, and we'll repeat the question for the recording. Yes? So the question is, on Hannah's slide, there were 2 instances of the vector store, and what's the point of having 2? What do they each do? So, Hannah?
Yeah, part of the importance was just to demonstrate that Fountain is one instance of IRIS and Serenity is a separate instance of IRIS, so showing them as 2 completely different installations. But within Fountain right now, and from our initial approach, we actually did all of the vectorizing and vector storing in Fountain itself. So that's one option. You could do the Fountain storing in there and have access to the vectors on our own on-premises Fountain. So we do still have that capability. We've been using that functionality, at least with the Ask Me bot still. So still leaving that in rotation as an option, I guess, but it's not necessary. So Serenity also can handle all of the vectorizing and all of the vector storing. So it wouldn't necessarily need to be there, but for our purposes, it was great to have both of those avenues to seek kind of custom solutions where they were best fit.
Yes? Okay, so the question was for Fountain and Serenity, basically what is our chunking strategy and how big are the chunks? So let's see, Victor, do you want to start with that one?
I'm happy to talk about Serenity. So our chunks, and we experimented quite a bit with that. So what seems to work best on the present data sets is chunks of size of 500 tokens. And we have no non-overlapping chunks. But so those 500 tokens include the metadata that we insert, like title, subtitle, and so on.
Yeah, so then from the Fountain side, we've been in POC mode, I guess, for the last little while of development. And from the start, we were working with the documentation team. So Ask Me, that chatbot that we've discussed a little bit, has really custom XML documents that we scrape off of. So there was a lot of experimentation with that to see which metadata, which tags to keep included, how best to kind of pull that information across, and then which chunking models to go with. I think we originally went by those tags in the XML documents, tried that for a little bit. That didn't end up being our best approach. And then at this point, we've had SerenityGPT taking the lead on that. So we're not like handling the chunking at this point. So it's not having to keep those in tandem. And SerenityGPT handles it for us, so we just kind of don't have to put all the thinking into it anymore. But yeah, we went through a lot of different, I think, trial and test periods with which were best fit to both getting the right information from the files, given the importance of, like, I think layered tagging basically was the structure. And if Serenity has access to public HTMLs, you don't have to do that parsing yourself, so they'll do all the parsing and then chunking themselves instead. So it kind of takes off even a secondary layer. So yeah, that's what's Fountain's handling instead of the chunking, is just that kind of parsing.
Yeah, so the question is about test sets and how we get those and how we use them. So there are automated ways of getting them. There is a thumbs up, thumbs down. And when someone clicks thumbs down, we ask for either a quick description of what the correct answer should be or what's wrong with the current answer, or a link to the correct answer. We are, in some domains, we can automatically generate this eval set. For example, in the case of customer support, we could look at resolved tickets where the ticket description is the question and then whatever is the resolution in the comments is the correct answer. Yeah, and we are working on ways to automatically insert those into our core eval sets, but so at the moment we curate the ones that actually make it into the golden set. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Let me just add on to that, and that is that we're trying as many methods and tactics as we can to check the quality, get feedback, and then improve the quality. As all of you know, this whole generative AI and chatbots is fairly new for everyone, for all of us. So we're learning and testing. And so some of the methods and tactics are that we survey, in the developer community, we survey the people that have used the developer community AI on a regular basis, actually kind of get their direct feedback. We use the thumbs up, thumbs down, as Victor mentions. We're also constantly we're using a bunch of analytics to see when questions resulted in no answer, where it's not a hallucination, but the SerenityGPT says, "I don't know, please ask the community." We're checking all of those analytics, and then we also, just to keep checking and testing, we actually have done recently a third-party test of quality and question and answer and have their breakdown, just so we can keep learning. So basically the answer is we're trying a lot of things and constantly trying to improve the quality.
And not to add way too much to one question, but for us as well, Kim Kohler led the team there, but they have done a fantastic job of doing really robust testing, which involved people from all across the company with really individual expertise on our tooling. So knowing that the documentation, because ObjectScript is so specific, we want to really get expert opinions there. So making sure that we're getting really fantastic core human opinion to make sure that the answers are correct. So coming from a bunch of different angles there.
Question over here. Yeah. So the question was the amount of time it takes to both first consume and then any pre-processing that needs to happen on the data so that it can be embedded and stored, right? Victor?
Yeah, consuming the data is easy in a way, and you can control the speed by throwing more hardware at it. You could get a GPU and then it will be very fast. Cleaning the data, we are trying to avoid doing that as much as possible and rather set up the RAG system so that it works with the data that it has, because cleaning the data is, especially unstructured data, is very difficult. And LLMs do an amazing job understanding and following instructions. So we try to fix that problem on the LLM level or on the retrieval level. But there has to be at least some signal in the data. So what often happens if you have a lot of, say, out-of-date information, then when the LLM provides a response, it will say, okay, there are 3 responses to your question, depending on where you look, and it will give you all of those 3. And then as a user, you have a little X button that you can deprecate some data sources to not be used anymore.
Other questions?
So how did you arrive on one of the slides? There was 50% accuracy and 95% accuracy. So how did we get those numbers? Yes, that's a very good question. And actually, I often preface that slide by saying that don't pay too much attention to the numbers. I'm just illustrating the idea. But 95% is a real number. So on the eval sets across customers, we reach at least 95% accuracy after we do all of our calibration. 50% is more anecdotal, just by looking at our customers who have tried, say, using Microsoft Copilot, and they just get inaccurate answers to very simple questions all the time. No, that's with RAG. So Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, is something that basically is supposed to be doing RAG, but as most of the out-of-the-box tools, you cannot make this work out of the box. You need to actually do some calibration for the data set and for the use case.
Other questions? And so I have one. I'm curious on more detail in terms of how you've arrived at your decision to use the Snowflake embedding model as the basis for the work that you're doing with embeddings in Serenity.
Yeah, so we have been using E5 Large V2 for over a year before we decided that another model is better. There is a leaderboard, a public leaderboard on Hugging Face for open source embedding models. Actually, not just open source, for all embedding models, but we mostly look at open source embedding models. And we check the embedding models that have the right size in terms of the number of dimensions. I think it's 1024 for the ones that we are using currently. And we look at we have special evaluation framework that lets us evaluate just the retrieval results. And there are metrics called recall at K. So by K could be top 1 result, top 3 result, top 10 results. And we can try different embedding model, re-index all of our data, and see which metrics we get on a new embedding model. And Snowflake actually had better scores across our evaluation sets. So, and then we also look at our end-to-end evals, the one I showed, where you get a question and correct answer, and those also slightly improved.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, John. Great question. The question was for the developer community, now that there's an AI bot that's automatically generating answers, are those AI-generated answers excluded as data sources for future RAG? Dean, are you able to speak to that? You're with Victor, okay.
So the answers are not, well, until very recently, there was no way of including the answers. The answers would not be recorded anywhere. They would just be displayed. I think more recently, there is new functionality allows you to create a community post from the response. and then that would be embedded. But that is a moderated process, and I think only valuable kind of questions and answers will be saved as actual posts that will be embedded.
Well, I think what John's actually referring to is the brand new feature, I think launched like last week, where there are actual auto-generated tentative answers given when questions are asked, not questions of the bot, but questions of the community. Dean, can you speak to that?
Those are also actually moderated as well. So we're doing
Yes,
the same
they are
procedure.
moderated. Yep.
So the answer is, if it's been moderated and approved, yes, it does get part of the system.
So let's make sure we have very careful moderators in the loop. Yeah. All right. The last question? Okay. So the question was, do you have to use the same model for your embedding, your vectorization, and your LLM? I'll let Victor handle that.
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. I was confused by the same thing when I was beginning this work. So no, there is no connection at all. You are doing the retrieval any way you like, so you have your embedding model that there may not be even an LLM, so just let's forget about the LLM for a second. You have your embedding model, you get your data embedded, so basically now you store it in IRIS Vector Search. Then a query comes in, you get a vector representation of that query, and you're looking for the nearest neighbors in that vector space. That's your search results. Yeah. So now to the LLM, all that we are doing, the only connection is we are sending the question and the search results, the actual passages that we found, to the LLM, but there is no embedding overlap in. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Because your embeddings are basically another column where you've got all your original data sources, and then the embeddings basically a way to look up. So.
All right, thank you all for your questions and for listening today. I know you've seen this slide probably close to 20 times at this point, but another plug for EAPs, getting access to our technology as early as possible so you can start exploring and learning new things. If anyone wants to scan, I'll give a second. But then, yeah, again, we wanted to give one more really big thank you for everyone for sticking around to a late Wednesday session to listen to us talk and hear about everything we've been doing. We've been really excited about the project and the partnership we've been working on, so thanks for listening. If you want to give feedback, that's in the CVEN app for our session or just the conference in general. And then one last thank you.